you actually do have an epithelium here. They're pretty low cuboidal, but it is an epithelium nonetheless. What's the structure inside the line here? Follicle. And what's substance at A? Yeah, you can answer colloid, or you could answer thyroglobulin. Will work as well. Want to get specific. What's the cell at B? Yeah, parafollicular or C cell, or some authors call it an interfollicular cell, but parafollicular or C cell will work as well. I think C cell is probably the best one to memorize because C cell goes with calcitonin, right? That's the product. So the hormone is calcitonin. I didn't steal this off the internet, I swear. Yeah, it was already labeled, and I said, why mess around? I'll just steal it, the whole thing. So I think I asked you first off, what's the organ? It's trachea. When you see the tissue at 9, which is the cartilage, actually it's hyaline cartilage. And then you see submucosal glands, right? And you see a pseudostratified columnar epithelium with prominent cilia. Yeah, it's trachea. So those were all of the answers there.
I got a question.
Yeah.
On the sheet, it says fibroconnective cartilage.
It's called the fibroconnective layer,
Oh, okay.
but I don't think it's fibroconnective cartilage.
Is tracheal cartilage fine?
Tracheal cartilage? Yeah, I guess so. You know, it's kind of, if you want to get really picky about it, you have to look really carefully at what am I asking for. When I ask tissue, it's the tissue type. If it's a structure, if I would ask what's the structure, tracheal cartilage would probably be the description, but I'm not that picky. I'm picky, but I'm not that picky. All right, so this one was probably, maybe, challenging. In the future, on the final, when there's more at stake, I will provide you with a low mag image just to give you some anatomical context. But I think the fact that you had 3 layers that you were going to have to identify by itself might have tipped you off as to what you're looking at here. So what is the organ? It's adrenal gland. Yeah, and A is capsule. Layer B, zona glomerulosa. C, fasciculata. And D, zona reticularis, right? All right, and this one, I just decided to go out and tell you that it was pituitary. I don't know how you'd know otherwise. So, given the structure, are we looking at the anterior or the anterior or posterior lobe of the pituitary? And anterior, right? This is anterior lobe. Posterior, you would see, you know, some pituocytes and lots of myelin and not much staining at all. The cell at A would be what? Reddish, orangish staining. Those are the acidophiles. A for acidophile. B for basophile. Okay. Kind of set that up for you. Chromophobes can also be found. Chromophobes are really going to be very light in color. Like these two here and maybe this one here. So chromophobes are generally going to be smaller, they're undifferentiated, and they're going to be almost white or whitish gray. All right, now when looking at ducts and trying to decide what duct you have, I'm going to give you a little bit of leeway just because you're never 100% positive exactly where you are. One author might say it's this kind of duct, and another one will say it's the other kind of duct. So I'm not going to be quite that picky. So what would you call this on the left side? What did I ask first? Oh, first I asked the structure at D. That's an alveolar duct. We're not in the alveolus quite yet. This would be an alveolus. This would be an alveolus. But this is alveolar duct. On the left side, what would you call, actually I think I asked this first. What tissue are we looking at right here? Smooth muscle, right? And so that was kind of as a hint, when you have this much smooth muscle, what would you call this thing? I would probably go with terminal bronchiole, but once again, I'll give you a little bit of leeway. At the top here, I would say this is borderline respiratory bronchiole, but we're not really there. This is terminal bronchiole. Again, I'll give you a little bit of leeway. On the right side, oops. Now I should have maybe given you some scale indication, but if you look at the size of the epithelium, and if you look at the size of, say, an alveolus here versus an alveolus here, this is a lower mag image. So this tube is actually maybe twice the size of that tube. Do you see that? Do you get that? It's something you should be able to infer from looking at these now that it's been about 12 weeks. So this is a larger tube for sure. And then what's this tissue here? It's cartilage. So the fact that you have the presence of cartilage in a fairly large tube, this is probably a bronchus. Now if you labeled it as a bronchiole, I'll accept that as well. But this is not a terminal bronchiole, this is not a respiratory bronchiole. It's a bronchus or bronchiole, okay? Because of the presence of cartilage. No respiration going on here whatsoever, okay? This is a very substantial piece of tissue. All right then.